Hello, everyone. Welcome to our event for working remotely before and after the pandemic. My name is Katarina. I am an ambassador for Women in Tech, a global movement for bridging the gap, the gender gap in technology and empowering women to start careers in STEM and entrepreneurship. I'm also CEO of Adiva, a remote network of software engineers and designers working from all over the globe. We partner with companies to help them scale flexibly, build products faster. And in such an environment, I've been working remotely myself for 8 years so far. So that's the reason why I'm very passionate about this topic. And I'm glad to have these amazing panelists with us today who will be sharing their own experiences working remotely. So please welcome first Lindsey Kerr. She is engineering manager in GitLab, an all-remote company. Welcome, Lindsey.
Hi, thank you. I've been at GitLab now for about 8 months, and I've been in software for almost 20. In past roles, I've worked on distributed teams as an engineer and as a manager, but this is the first time I've worked at a company that is fully remote and global, the way GitLab is. Our approach to remote is very different than anything I've ever experienced, and I'm really excited to share with you what I've learned since I've been there.
I'm looking forward to hear more about it. Kristen, welcome. So this is Kristen Williams. She is a tech recruiter with Theorem at the moment, has been working remotely for many years so far. Hi.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Kristen Williams. I am talent recruiter at Theorem LLC. We are a digital innovation firm located in Los Angeles, and we were founded as a remote company. I myself have been working remote for about 15 years so far. Wow. I've been in the tech industry for over 20 years. I am lucky to be doing what I love every day. So meeting people and, getting to share my passions in tech, but just having these conversations with people around the world.
Great. It's great to have you, and I'm looking forward to hear what you have to share with us. Our final panelist is Yulia Khalida. She is coming from Facebook, the tech lead there. Yulia, welcome. Would like to hear, she will share a bit about her experience coming from a company that hasn't been working remotely before, but is quickly adapting to it.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this panel. I think it will be just a great productive conversation where I will learn as well a lot from all of you, because as Katerina mentioned, Facebook is just adapting to working remotely policy. So there has been just quite a few challenges that we have to go through. And I feel like we're currently at a nice place where I will be also happy to share some of the exciting things that we've done, and I personally took as a guidelines for me to stay productive in the tech space.
Perfect. So let's start with Lindsey. Can you tell us a bit about, what have you been doing at GitLab? You're an all-remote company. As I read on your website, you have people in more than 65 countries and over 1,000 members at the moment, right? So maybe tell us a bit about how you are managing to coordinate such a big team, actually multiple teams coming from that many locations, and what are the best practices that you're using to achieve that?
Sure. Our processes at GitLab were built around the fact that we were remote to begin with. I think very early on, they tried to have an office in San Francisco, and they learned quickly that people just weren't showing up, so they gave up on that. So all of our values, our processes, how we work together is really built around being remote, which is, I think, what makes us so successful at it. You can find all of our core values out in our handbook. Transparency is one of the core values we'll find there, which makes it really easy to adapt to the culture, to learn about the culture, whether you're a GitLabber or not. If you go to about.gitlab.com/handbook, you can learn about how we work as a team today. It's really exciting. I think the main question people wonder is, how do you deal with meetings if your team is spread across the world? I personally have people that report to me that are in Switzerland and Hawaii and Colorado. So scheduling meetings is a challenge. The key there really is we don't. Meetings are optional. Meetings are always optional. Meetings have to have an agenda. If you know what's on the agenda, you know whether your attendance is necessary. If you can't make it because it's happening at 2 a.m, you get the opportunity to ask questions in the agenda, even if you're not there. You can review the meeting on YouTube afterwards. We're asked to keep our discussions in the appropriate locations whenever possible. You start with the MR, you start with, or some people call it the PR, you start with a code change. If that doesn't exist yet, you keep your conversation in the issue or the ticket or the story, you might call it in Jira. It's really rare that we have to make a decision in a meeting because we really embrace this asynchronous approach to working together and discussing things. For me, it actually is a big benefit because it gives me this chance to do extra homework, to really think about what my response is going to be, where sometimes in meetings you respond based on either your emotion or a lack of information at times. So I really do appreciate that opportunity to get prepared. Other strategies at GitLab outside of the meetings, they really, even though we're remote, GitLab encourages us to get to know each other. Whether that be through what we call coffee chat, so just informal half-hour meetings that you schedule with someone that you don't even work with. Part of our onboarding is you're asked to schedule 10 coffee chats within the first 2 weeks, preferably with people that aren't going to be on your team. So I've made a lot of great friendships that way. We have company calls that will go into breakout sessions. So you just randomly get thrown into a room with 5, 10 different people and you just chat every day. Usually we have this opportunity to meet in person. They call it contribute. So once a year, they bring people to wonderful locations where you spend a week just getting to know each other. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Prague in March, but I'm really looking forward to getting to meet people in person. So despite the fact that we're remote, we do value those personal relationships that are much harder to build virtually. Slack contributes to that a lot as well. If there's a discussion you want to have or a group you want to join, there's a Slack channel at GitLab for it, and people are very active. I've been participating in a Pride parade in our GitLab Slack recently, which has been just wonderful. So there's
a Pride parade online on Slack?
We did. So it started out in a large company, what's happening at GitLab channel, and it's been moving through the different channels at Slack, or in our Slack channels at GitLab. So it's been really fun to show our support and be an ally. We've had a lot of really honest conversations over the course of the last, I'm not going to just say 3 months, over the course of the time that I've been there. And that really helps you get to know people. So when you do end up in a, either a tense work discussion or, sort of a deadline-driven, stressful situation, if you know people better, you're gonna be more comfortable telling them what you need, especially your team. So this brings me to the last point I want to bring about one of the strategies that GitLab has around being remote, which is everyone's a manager of one. So I have people that report to me. I have direct reports all over the world, but I don't dictate what they do. I work with them to build an implementation plan, to provide them whatever support they need. I kind of act as a scrum master. I remove blockers, but they decide how they spend their day. We don't even tell people what hours a day they need to work, or even technically how many hours you have to work. This is part of our unlimited PTO policy. If you're delivering on the expectations and we are providing the value to our customer that our business wants us to, you're doing your job. So I think that a lot of people really appreciate that flexibility. We have a lot of new parents on our team. We have a lot of people that are really embracing the remote and traveling a lot and joining us from really exotic locations, which is fun. So I think all of those things really create an environment where being remote is a benefit, not a challenge for us.
I love it. And do you have teams? So in terms of the teams as smaller units in the company, are they international, between borders, or yes?
Yes, all of it. So there's no, so like I said, my team and the folks that report to me, I have one individual in Switzerland and one person in Hawaii. And in our more direct engineering team, we've got folks all over in Europe and New Zealand. So when we hire, we're not looking at where you're located. I mean, we do have compensation discussions and we look at those factors, but we have the great opportunity to hire regardless of where you're at, which really opens up the pool of applicants. And I did get to participate in recruiting and hiring when I first started. The team that I'm on is brand new. It's a brand new stage to GitLab. So I was part of the interviewing and hiring process, which was a great introduction to GitLab and a really different experience. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a second, to any of the interviewing and recruiting processes I've been through.
Nice. So yes, as you mentioned, Kristen has also a lot of experience in that area. So being a recruiter herself and having worked with so many different people from different cultures. So Kristen, maybe you can follow up on this in terms of how it's like to, again, work with a team that's distributed across the world and hire people from such a big pool. And also maybe share some of the, challenges and benefits that come from it.
Sure, sure. Well, it's wonderful to be at a remote company because you really do get to experience, you meet people from all over the world, you get to experience those cultures. And I feel like, between that and then also, what you were saying, Lindsey, that like you have an unlimited pool of talent. So you really can find people who are motivated to contribute to, whatever their discipline is. So if there are open source projects that someone really wants to dive into, you could find those people. It doesn't matter if they are, in your city or if they're across the country or if they are, in another part of the world. So I really love that. I think that some of the challenges are really like setting expectation over like communication. So like time zones and things like that. Yes, we can have people all over the world, but in a remote company, it's like Theorem or like GitLab. These companies have been established as, yes, we are remote. And so like we have a lot of documentation about what to expect when giving feedback. But if you're working in an organization which is trying to navigate remote, anew, they might not have really thought about that. So trying to navigate like time zone shifts, like when will you be available, and like setting expectations around that. Luckily, in my organization, we are looking at, what are the objectives of your role, what needs to happen, and when does it need to be completed? And that's really what you're working toward. But I know that some people are in situations where you need to be online between like X time and X time. And in those cases, that's definitely a challenge. Another challenge with, hiring people from all over the world is setting like a calibration with communication. So accents, like I grew up in a multicultural environment. I have lots of relatives that speak lots of other languages. So like I hear an accent and it makes sense to me. But if someone is interviewing and they've only been used to like one regional accent and you're meeting someone from across the world, all of a sudden like turns of phrases might be odd. Why did they say that? or sometimes just the accent is so thick that you might not know. And so some of the tools that we've used is like recording information or recording a lot of our interviews. So we might do that and then, meet with the team to say, is this acceptable? Like, is this level of communication something that you can you work with this? And if not, then let's see, let's calibrate. So, yeah. And then I'd say that for myself, some of the challenges that I've had just throughout my career, I was like, I'm not a morning person at all. So like, when I interview, I start interviewing usually around 10 a.m. my local time. And that gives me time to like caffeinate, and start the day and answer the email. But I was working with a team that was based out of India. And so I knew I was going to be recruiting people for this team working in that time zone. So, for that, I shifted my day so that I could meet everyone on their time and in their and when it's expected for them to, to be online and be productive. But in my organization right now, because we are a services firm and our team members, our future team members, are going to be aligning part of their day with that of the client, I'll tend to, work with candidates and, try to find candidates that are happy to take calls when I can.
Yeah. I have one follow-up question, and this is something I'm very interested about lately because I find it fascinating. So it's cultural backgrounds. And, coming from different countries where you're approaching communication differently or feedback differently. And it can be hard to communicate with, people from the US because sometimes you have slangs, you have, again, the cultural differences where something said a certain way doesn't mean the same thing in different countries. So have you had any experience, like maybe some misunderstandings on interviews, and this can be for everyone, like working with an international team?
For sure.
Anything?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, like that is definitely something that I've noticed. Some people from some cultures are happy to, sorry for that. Some people are happy to give feedback, and other people, like, it's just not okay to speak back to your boss. So here at Theorem, like, we set the expectation in onboarding that, you need to have, you need to accept feedback. You need to give feedback. Feedback is expected early and often and with kindness.
Great. Anyone wants to add something to that? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, Yulia. So working with Facebook, as we mentioned, it's been a bit different since you've been also in the process of adapting to this new standard. What were some steps that the company took, and how did you adjust your processes to make sure everyone was productive at home?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just to give a little bit of a background, we've been a company where remote work was allowed, and it was kind of, not forbidden for certain days within a week. So there are certain days within a week where we don't have any meetings, and if you want to work from home, please feel free to do this. People just are not forced to come to office if there is no necessity. But definitely it wasn't like 100% remote. There was just like some flexibility in terms of your time allocation. And when pandemic really hit the world that hard, I feel like Facebook was one of the companies that done an awesome job of making sure that all of the employees are actually quickly adjust to this, style of working. And I like usually when I talk about adjusting to the style of working remotely, I think about three different aspects. First of all is emotional aspect, technical aspect, and financial. So maybe if that's okay, I'll go through each and every aspect. So in terms of emotional support, working remotely is okay when you don't have anything on your mind, right? When it's just like a normal life where people are healthy, there are no concerns around about your family, relatives, and usually it's easier. But in the situation where we are currently, or where since they have been since March, that was kind of harder, right? Because we had to think about our jobs, but at the same time we have our families, and we have to think about how our kids are doing, how our parents are doing, especially if you're living far away from them and you don't have an opportunity to go visit them and take care of them. And so Facebook took an awesome stand in this aspect and was supporting everyone. So if you needed some time off to take care of your family, please do this. Nobody was obliged to, keep the same strict working hours as it was expected before. So the whole company was advocating for people just to take care of their families, of their health situation, and take your job, as a secondary factor. And probably you've read on news, there was another awesome step or action that the company took in reference to eliminating this burden of going through performance lifecycle. If you probably know, big companies in the US, such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, and others, like other things, are usually going through performance lifecycle reviews twice a year. It's usually during summertime and wintertime when you're summarizing what you've done for the company, and then you're evaluated based on your performance and impact that you brought to the company. So in order to remove this burden of people going through this performance review, again, just because the working conditions have been changing drastically, the performance lifecycle period has been canceled. So, for example, this summertime, we are not expected to basically provide the feedback about how much we've done, or we kind of will go through a period of time, through a process of summarizing some of the impact that has been done, but it's not as strict as it was before, and employees are not being evaluated. So there won't be rating around the performance since the beginning of this year. So this is what I call financial support. The company I would say, was holding our hand in terms of this is okay. Don't stress out about work and take care of your family, take care of the situation and issues that you're going through. In terms of tech support, we were allowed to get any equipment we would love to. For example, usually when I work from home, I have a laptop. But just as an engineer, a laptop is not enough for me. So I have a very powerful machine, iMac, in my office. And so when there was an announcement that we have to start working from home, we were given the green light to come to the office, pick up any equipment we need to feel productive at home. So there was no stops or blockers, in terms of what you can buy and expense, because again, in the long run, the company cares about productivity from home. And another important thing is, I would say, financial support. Probably you also read that there was a financial support that every employee got from the company. That was a really nice bonus. At the time where I would say most companies were going through hardships, had to lay off a large number of people, Facebook took the opposite step. It actually gave an extra financial support to every employees, so they could spend it for the needs they need during this really hard time in the world. So I would say, all of these three aspects, technical, financial, and emotional support, which were which happened at the right time at the beginning, helped a lot of people. And everyone is, I feel currently at the point where we just adjusted to the way how we need to work from home. And I would say the productivity is definitely not an issue. It hasn't been affected seriously. And I can actually say that some of the teams started to work even harder working from home. Just to give an example, I was working from a New York office, and in New York, everything is shut down, right? You don't have anything to do. So why wouldn't you spend extra hours working? You're not obliged to, but if you truly enjoy your work and you want to do this. And so I feel this flexibility of people investing more time into projects and work also paid out nicely to the company business overall.
It's great that you mentioned that about choosing to work more because you don't have anything else to do, or it's just fun to start with. But this is something that I'd like to come back to afterwards, because a lot of times it's a huge challenge and it's causing burnout with remote employees, especially when you can draw a good line between what's home life and what's office life. But let's circle back to it afterwards. I wanted to ask you, Yulia, about what's the experience right now, because Facebook. Yes, you mentioned that you had the opportunity to work from home several days or certain days in the week, but you're now completely shifting to a more permanent, work from home or working remotely model, where everyone is flexible and able to work probably from wherever they want, right? So
kind of.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear your personal experience, what's the difference, what is going to change in terms of the usual working day and the teams, the company culture?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so just like any other, I would say, big companies in the world, currently we're evaluating how we're going about letting all of the employees working remotely. And unfortunately, there is no finalized plan. It would take some time, right? Closer, maybe by the end of the year, there will be some news around what's the guidelines. But what I can say at this moment is, yeah, people are allowed to work the hours they want to work. It's very similar to what GitLab has. It's not about, you know, a number of hours from like 8 a.m. or like 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. that you have to work. It's more about what's the impact. If you can do your work within just 2 hours span, please do this, and then, you know, just save your time and do other stuff that you have in your life, or devote to other projects. So like Facebook is not a company that truly cared about hours. It's a company that truly cared about impact that every engineer is making to the business. So I would say in terms of working hours and time difference and people working from different locations, you know, this is something that we've already gone through. So there are offices in Singapore, London, like on the other coast of New York. So it's both East and West Coast. So it's something not new to us. I would say the difference that hit most people currently. I'm sorry, I have some construction going on outside. Maybe you can hear. I truly apologize about that. So the difference that I would say a lot of people started to feel is that a lot of meetings. If previously, you know, you're in the same office, you sit next to your product manager or your designer, you can come up to him or her, ask a question, and then come back to your space. Now you actually have to set up a time. And sometimes it's harder to set up a time because the calendar is booked by other engineers who also need to, you know, some time to speak to this person. So I would say meetings is the hardest point for most of the people that are currently working. It's really hard to find time on, you know, managers' calendars, other engineers' calendars. And so one of the announcement that has been made is that please don't overbook your calendars. And if you're invited to a meeting, but you don't think that you need to attend it, drop it. It's okay. Or if you're at a meeting and during the middle of the meeting, you know, if you're in the office, you just stand by and walk out of the room. That would be weird, right? But with the remote work and just like dialing in and doing all of the virtual connection meetings, it's easy. And people are advocating for like, if you don't need to be till the end of the meeting, just like drop and do some other stuff. So I feel like meetings is one of the challenging parts. Another challenging part is definitely food. If you know, Facebook was the company where breakfast, lunch, and dinner were provided earlier. Now we have to do all of the hard work on our own. So it's kind of, you know, stealing some time, at least from my calendar, because I would usually, you know, just go grab lunch somewhere in a cafeteria from Facebook and just like work at the same time. Now I have to focus on cooking, and I can't really, you know, jungle between my laptop and a pan on the oven. So that's kind of like a hard thing that I would say hit a lot of engineers and people who used to be in office. Yeah, what else? Yeah, in terms of our working hours, again, I feel like it's up to your responsibility of like how you manage your time. And just because I feel like I have more time to work right now because I don't have anything else to do, and I truly love what I do, working extra 3-4 hours a day is cool because it means I can finish my project earlier and probably get impact earlier and like see the results of my tests earlier. So I'm personally excited about that. Nobody, you know, nobody has to work extra hours, absolutely. And I can say that there are, for example, members on my team who have family, who have kids. And so they have this flexible policy of like, they work 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week they take care of their loved ones, children, family, etc. Like for me, I don't have a family. Like everything is closed in New York. I don't have any places to go to. Like why wouldn't I just like spend extra hours in front of my laptop if I want to? So again, it's super flexible. It's like use your time best to judgment. If you want to, you know, wrap up projects and work more, do that. But if you need to take 2 days a week to take care of the family, please go ahead and do that as well.
It's really fascinating how, you know, for a large company like that, you can do the transition so fast. I love it.
Yeah, honestly, I was super I would say against this. I was, because Facebook introduced the policy of remote work at the end of March, but there was still some span of time of like, you can work from home, you can come to office. I was that person who was coming to office every day till the time till the day it actually officially closed, and they're like, no, we don't let any employees to come on site. And I was like, oh, I don't want to work remotely. But now, because I was really afraid of like my productivity, whether I will be able to like focus at my place on the work that I need to do. But I feel like now, as most of us have been through this and found the best way to adjust, it's actually great. And I see that the tech is actually getting transformed drastically. And I'm like totally in support of offering 100% remote for the employees who want to do that.
Yeah. I think it's always the same when you're transitioning from an office environment to a remote one. It happened with us as well. When we started, we were also working from the office, a small team. And then at first we introduced a remote Friday. So that was only one day in the week. The first Friday, everyone was at the office. So nobody wanted to work remotely. After a while, as people adapted, we tried introducing Office Tuesdays just to, get together once a week and have fun. It didn't work out, and after that, it was all remote. So it needs time, but after you get used to it, and yes, there are people who are not very comfortable with it, probably, get lonely and stuff, but there are ways to work around that. And if you have the opportunity, as you have in Facebook, to just choose what's your preference, that's also amazing. One thing I forgot to mention for the audience, so you can share your question with us on the link shared below the stream over here. We'll circle back to that shortly and make sure to answer as many questions as possible.
And I just wanted to second, before you move on, I wanted to second Yulia's comment about the emotional support, even for companies that started remote prior to the pandemic. Putting that effort into making sure that people are taking extra time for their family and for themselves and for their mental health has been a big focus of GitLab, and I've appreciated that so much. And I feel like any company who's not taking the time to do that right now is really not benefiting or thinking of their employees right now. So I hope that everyone who watches this takes that time, to talk to the people that they work with, or that work for them, about how they're dealing, because even though it feels like things are starting to come back to normal, people are still stressed, and there's still a lot that, I think people need to get off their chest and talk about. So thank you for bringing that up, Yulia.
And if you think, if you're result oriented at the end, because working remotely, you need to be, that's the best approach you can take, because if your employees are not happy, or they're distracted, or they're fighting their personal troubles, then they won't be able to, deliver anything for the company. So that's a great advice.
And it's important to remember that while some people might be hyper productive because they're really don't have other things to do with their time, weighing that against folks who have much less time that they can dedicate and attention that they can dedicate towards that job. As somebody who's in that camp more than the other, I do feel a certain amount of like, oh, am I going to keep up with my peers who are in another situation? So just being really respectful of that as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. Especially, people with kids and people who, or any kinds of family conditions.
Or your own health problems even, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened early on in the COVID news, our CEO, Brady Brim DeForest, wrote to everyone just when the news started to come out, not before like states started closing down. And it really made me feel like happy to be part of Theorem when I read, like, if anyone has challenges, the door is open. And really the leadership team having the doors open, managers being open to flex schedules. These are all things that make the employee feel so much better, makes them feel valued. Really, it helps to boost productivity.
I wanted to go to that burnout question that we mentioned before. with all this, like having the opportunity to work from anywhere and however time you want, it can be very, interesting at first, but after a while, it's hard to deal with. So maybe, Kristen, you can share a bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of learning on burnout over the past year and a half, 2 years, and kind of learning how to step back and set a schedule for myself, because up until probably 3 years ago, I was in that camp where even when my daughter was 1 or 2 and she was sleeping a lot, I could do so much work and I could call so many people and do so many other things. And now as she's older, I find myself having to give her the time that she needs. And of course with COVID, cook the food and parcel it out so that when I need food quickly, I have it, But some of the things that I've done is really to identify my role and really look at what is my role and how am I going to be successful? What are the outputs that I need? And just focusing on those and really setting that priority and prioritizing what those are and sticking to that. One of the challenges I had before in working with early stage startups, you're recruiting, but then it's oh, we have this new person and we need to come up with this policy, so that, you're drafting policy or you're, looking at someone's presentation and next thing you know, yes, I'm recruiting, but then I'm also, writing the handbook and then researching, benefits policies for the future, or, doing a 401k audit. And all of that takes time. So really just looking at what is my elemental, what is the fundamental thing that I'm trying to achieve right now? And, just working toward those. And then also setting a schedule for the work, or for my work. So I know that right now with COVID, my daughter's 5, she needs a certain amount of homeschooling, or else it's all going to be iPad all the time for her. And I can't accept that. I won't accept that. So I shifted my day now so that I usually start by 10 a.m. my local time, and the time before I'm really spending on homeschooling, and then before that I have some other things that I'm doing. So making sure that I stick, okay, work will be from this time to this time. And then after, when I get to the end of the day, putting the device down and focusing on something else. I'm really lucky in that I live in the Catskills of New York. It's beautiful out here. When I need to go outside, I still can. I don't need to worry so much about distancing. But I really believe in stepping away from the desk. And then, of course, during the day, just to, to make sure that I'm not stuck, I wound up getting a standing desk. So I stand, I sit, I shift, I fidget.
I love that.
And then also just having a dedicated space for work. I know that, with some people who are newer to remote work, you might not have had an office space in your house, but even just having a corner where I know that the work is going to be here. And when I step away from this space, it's not work. So just having that dedicated space is also, good for the mind.
I completely agree. And also getting dressed.
Yes, getting dressed, bed.
I didn't shower every morning until I started working from home. So now it's just got to be part of my routine to remind myself that this is going to work.
Love it. Lindsey, maybe you can add something about some maybe corporate policies, or how are you handling burnout inside the teams?
Sure. I wanted to add to what was just being said, because it's very important to watch your own habits of burnout as a people manager. Trying to make sure that the folks who report to me and work directly with me aren't falling into those pitfalls as well is a challenge, because I think we've already seen on this call that everyone has a different approach in how they're dealing right now, how they're dealing with getting through day to day. And some people love the distraction of work. Some people really need to take more time for themselves and their family, especially when people are new at a job. They feel the need to prove themselves and they feel the need to keep up with their peers. And if one of their peers is one of those folks who is really benefiting from working more, but this person isn't, I think that is a recipe for burnout. And having those conversations really can only happen if you know that person well. So, as a manager and just conscientious employee, I work very hard to make sure that I know the people that I work with, and not just like what kind of technical skills they have, but like what's their family situation like, you know, what's their hobbies, what do they do with their free time. You know, I think that by doing that, I'm able to talk about more personal things like, are you getting sleep? I mean, I had a person on my team that was starting to work from like 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. because that was when he could find time with the family situation and all of that. And it was very worrisome. And you know, eventually you start to see impacts from that, and whether it be defects in code or, you know, less participation in discussions, or just generally starting to worry about that person's well-being, I feel responsible as their manager to make sure that I'm working to let them know that that's not the expectation at our company. You know, we've had 2 what we call friends and family days in the last 3 months, where they've issued holidays to everybody in the company just to encourage people to find more balance. You know, we've found in our numbers, our productivity numbers and our throughput metrics, that we haven't seen a decrease in productivity over the course of the last 3 weeks and 3 months. And frankly, that worried our CEO, which to me was just the right message to give. So you were asking specifically about corporate policies around that. I think, you know, GitLab, like I said before, we build a culture to try and encourage these types of behaviors. You know, our transparency really fuels our asynchronous communication. The asynchronous communication is how we are able to be very flexible about our schedules. It's how I'm able to know how the folks on my team are, how productive they're being. You know, I don't have to actually ask for status reports. You know, I look at stand-up to try and remove blockers, but I'm able to look at their output. I'm able to look at the number of MRs that are merged and the number of issues that are closed, you know, what their velocity is. So we have tools for that. What's really hard in my job is that personal aspect, and, you know, making sure that I'm a force of good and I'm not stressing that person. I'm encouraging them to find that balance. You know, we did have a situation over the course of the last couple of months where we had a customer-driven deadline that, you know, that everyone's experiencing financial hardships, even our customers. So, you know, when faced with, if we don't get this particular project done, we might lose a whole customer that's bringing a lot of money to the company. We were torn between this message of take time, take balance. You know, we're not expecting the same amount of productivity that we got prior to this situation with, hey, we really have to get this done by the end of this milestone. And I found myself being, you know, contradicting myself. So it was a big lesson for me. And I stopped and I checked myself and I frankly apologized to my team. You know, we met the deadline, but I didn't feel very good about it in the end, because I felt like we weren't backing our core values and we weren't doing what we were saying by telling people that, you know, this isn't a time to put extra work in. This is a time to take care of yourself and your family.
And now that you mentioned a bit about, you know, the processes about the managing the team and evaluating team members and everything, maybe you can give a quick overview to people who are just starting with remote work, how to evaluate their, you know, the performance of their team when they can't meet with them on a daily basis in the office.
Sure. You know, I liked what Yulia said about Facebook canceling their performance reviews. Unfortunately, we are still doing performance reviews right now. We did our 360. We did our 360 reviews within the last few weeks, and you know, I do feel like this isn't the best time to necessarily be gauging progress, but it doesn't mean that it's not important to talk about it, right? So, you know, even if productivity isn't at the expectations for productivity aren't where they were a year ago, we should still know, you know, are people growing within their job? Are they learning the technologies they need to do what we're asking them to do? So, you know, we use sort of the standard annual performance reviews. I'm pretty new to the company, so I haven't been through one yet. For me personally, as a manager, I have weekly one-on-ones. I talk to everyone on my team for a full hour, even when that means I have to get up early in the morning for me, which isn't always easy. You know, I communicate every day via Slack. We have our asynchronous daily stand-up, but that is all about the getting to know you part. To really understand their performance, like I said, I'm able to. Our tool is so transparent. You know, our processes are so transparent. We encourage people to, you know, put updates in the issue or the MR, you know, have the conversation in the right artifact so it's easy for managers to follow. It's not just for the other engineers that they're working with to be as productive as possible. It helps me be able to kind of, I don't want to say, because I'm not a micromanager. I definitely have avoided that through the course of my career, but monitor the progress. And for me, it's a big effort to find out where things are bottlenecking, where there are blockers, where there's places that I can help. You know, if I can catch misunderstanding and requirements early on, I save someone on my team a ton of effort. So, you know, to me, managing performance and having you know, a good understanding of my team's performance is about that day-to-day of looking at the output of their job, and are they meeting their deliverables? You know, are they delivering the level of code and the quality of code that we expect within our team?
Great. We have some interesting questions coming up. Let's see. So first, this came when we were talking about, you know, personal lives and professional lives, how to combine everything. And we have a question, if anyone has an advice for single moms that have their kids full-time, especially without a support network nearby. So the parents in the group.
I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have a husband who's here, who put his career aside to help raise our daughter when, you know, 5 years ago when we had her. So fortunately for me, I'm not in that position, but I've been working with several folks who are in that position, and I really do feel for the struggle that they're having. And my advice is talk to your employer, be honest with your employer about the situation that you're in. I really believe that people want to support their employees, and no one wants you to neglect your child. So if that's not the case with your employer, I don't know what to say. I feel like maybe you should, you know, talk to them honestly about what you need to be supported.
One of the things that I found, one of the adjustments I've had to make is like what is the level of interaction that I want her to have, you know, with the technology. So I find that, so my husband and I both work remotely, and so our jobs really haven't been impacted. And so it's really my daughter who's home, and I feel that, you know, she really needs to have this interaction that she was really benefiting from school. And now, like, all of that time is being filled by the iPad. And so what I've done, of course, I put as much educational stuff on there as I can. I set specific times aside that I know that, okay, we are going to do work together for like up to an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But a lot of my learning in this has had to be like letting go of the expectation that I have, which is like, I want you to be like in this constructive time, like for 4 hours. Well, she's not going to have that. So it's just me understanding that and saying, okay, like where does she need to be? How can I get there and still be happy and still be happy with the work that I'm doing here? And, you know, the fact that she has the iPad and maybe she'll play with Legos, but probably won't.
But accepting that you're still doing what you need to as a parent. You're not failing as a parent because your daughter has to have more screen time.
Right.
A follow-up on that from the same person is how to express that to an employer. Maybe you have a tip.
I hope that you've built a relationship with your manager at this point. You know, I feel like that's been a struggle for me in past jobs. I've definitely had leaders that I have not felt comfortable enough with saying that to. And I think that's your first big challenge there. So if you don't have that relationship with that person and you can't talk to them, you need to start building it. And this might be the time. And it's a horrible time to have to do that. But just be as honest as you can. It's especially hard when your manager doesn't have children and you know very clearly that they can't relate to the situation that you're in. I think everybody is compassionate. I think everybody has a certain amount of humanity in this situation and wants to help you, even if they can't put themselves in your shoes.
Another one about introvert colleagues. So how do you facilitate remote communication with people who are not that open in communicating? Or if you had experience working with someone, an introvert person, or if you are an introvert yourself and you had difficulties.
Slack.
If I can share some.
Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
Practices. I feel like one of the things that we're also doing great as a company is that we try to not just focus on work, but also on building the relationships outside work. And just because it's really hard right now, everyone is over VC. What we decided to do is the whole company is doing, remote happy hours and like remote game nights. So it's usually very close by the end of the day. All of the members of the team are invited to participate. And I feel like this is where you actually get to know people better and where you can just help them to feel more comfortable to get out of their comfort zone. And we actually have like similar activities twice a week. It's usually Wednesday and Friday. So I would recommend doing something like this where, people are just not so focused on VC and meeting and like work-oriented meetings, but also feel comfortable of building trust relationships outside of work duties during this like spare times closer by the end of the day.
Yeah, we at Theorem, we use the Donut app through Slack to get matched with team members that we wouldn't normally work with. And so it encourages us to get together for 30 minutes and just have a conversation about, outside of project work. And so what I found is that when the meeting time comes up, sometimes I might be finishing up notes or communicating with candidates, and I might feel the pull of like, I just want to get this thing finished. But I join this meeting with the last meeting I had was with one of our engineers and our CEO. And we talked about pets and all the other random things. And 30 minutes later, we all went on to our jobs, our regular jobs. And I feel like so much more refreshed and ready to go on with the day. But like, I know like I have a personal connection now with these other people that I might not have met, otherwise.
So I mentioned before that we usually get the opportunity to meet in person, and I think that helps even for introverts to be more comfortable with people. So as a substitute in the last few weeks, we had what we called a team day. So we had a group, we had a few synchronous and a few asynchronous activities that were just targeted at getting to know each other. So for example, we had everyone take a picture of their desk. We figured everyone knows what's behind you, but no one knows what your desk looks like. So everyone submitted a picture of their desk, and we got to guess whose was whose. We did a MTV Cribs style welcome to my house or like tour of your house and a talent show. I think those are our three synchronous activities. And then asynchronous, I guess the desk photo one was, we had a puzzle, we did some Pictionary. So we put a bunch of activities together just over the course of a day, and we had to start very early and end really late because we wanted to make sure that we got everybody included to some degree. And that's where the asynchronous ones are really fun because it didn't matter if you were in New Zealand or in, Russia. And it really helped. We got wonderful feedback. It doesn't match meeting in person. It doesn't have that same level, but I hope to do it again. And I plan on, continuing to throw out these small asynchronous activities just for fun randomly over the course of, upcoming weeks and months.
Another one as a follow-up to this with, again, working across time zones and countries. So what do you all feel about remote work and the impact it has in achieving gender, race, and demographic inclusiveness in technology, in business in general? Who wants to start?
Well, I think that remote work really opens the door to diversity because there are it's just you're not. There are incubators everywhere. There are pockets of there are communities of talented engineers and designers and product managers everywhere. And so and these people want to collaborate with with like-minded people. They want to continue to learn and broaden their own horizons. So I really do think that remote work has helped that and has helped to diversify companies and teams.
Anyone wants to add something?
Yeah, if I can add something, like the situation with the immigration currently in the US is kind of challenging with the current presidency and all of the restrictions that are being put in place. And I feel like allowing remote work and actually shifting from working in office and extending our cohorts from whom we're currently hiring will definitely benefit the business. I'm pretty sure that it will bring more diversity and inclusion into multiple areas of business. So I don't see any negative sides. It's all about positivity. So it's cool. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. As someone who lives in a fairly small community, there's not a ton of tech jobs here. So it gave me the opportunity to stay in the town that I wanted to raise my daughter in and still progress in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, what are some personality traits that an employee should have to be successful at working remotely? It doesn't have to be personality traits, but just, you're looking for maybe in a new team member or Kristen when hiring a new person.
Well, something that I always look for in a candidate is that they are always learning. Because I feel that if someone is always learning, that they have the motivation to get up every day and like work from home. Because you want to continue, growing and building your skill set. I think that one of the big things that I had to learn when I started working remotely was how to put the blinders on. So how to just look at, okay, this is what I need to achieve for the day. I don't need to worry about the laundry that's in the wash, or I know that the table is messy in the other room, but that's not the priority right now. Like the priority right now is for me to meet these people and help, find people for these roles. And so that's like being able to, again, prioritize, like talked about that earlier. So being able to really identify like what it is you need to do and then prioritizing for that.
So I'd add to that self-discipline and time management. I think it really all plays off everything that Kristen was just saying. I struggle with it. It's been something I've been adapting to over the last 8 months. So I still know how dirty my table is.
Yeah, I would support Lindsey in that. Yeah, self-discipline for me is number one. And I actually started to, to get ready and put mentally myself for what I will do tomorrow, the night before. So it's just like I try to plan the night before what I will do the next day, and it actually helps me to like breathe through the day in a planned, very organic and structured way. Okay.
So one last question before we wrap up. I wanted, and this is something that I'm also curious about. So on a video call, it can be hard, to discuss things, especially if it's informal and if we have introverted colleagues who are probably muted and have their videos off. So how, as a team leader or as a person who is leading a call, how do you ensure that everyone is heard and everyone has the opportunity to share their ideas?
I love this question because I don't know how it's different for remote versus in person. I've been in so many conference rooms. There's someone sitting in the back of the room mumbling their own answers to themselves. How do you get that person to speak up as well? I think it's that challenge that we were talking about earlier about introverts and getting people to feel comfortable enough to say what's on their mind and ask the questions that they have. So whether you're remote or whether you're in person, I think it's about building an environment of comfort and safety where people can say things that even if it might come across as to them sounding stupid or, ill-informed, that they still feel comfortable saying it.
I agree with you. That making sure that we set expectation up front. So if that is like at the start of the meeting, or also maybe at the start of the working relationship where during onboarding, we set expectation that, all feedback is welcome and that it needs to be given in a certain way. So with kindness and whatnot. But also just in the day-to-day, calling out to the other person, what are your thoughts? And like just making sure maybe if you do have a a daily stand-up, even if it's just 15, 20 minutes, just making sure that, so-and-so, what are you working on? And just giving them that time and to make sure that you're calling out to each person is really helpful.
I feel the same here with the panel, because we're not, together in the same room. So sometimes I'm not sure if I need to call on someone to answer something, or you would be just following up naturally.
When I'm interviewing candidates, of course, one of the other challenges is that, connectivity and the speed of internet. So what I always do is I will wait 1 to 2 seconds after I say something, just to make sure that, maybe it's taking time for my voice to go, or maybe the person is thinking something or is about to say something and it just hasn't come to me as yet.
Yeah, that's a good one.
One more trick that I'm using every time I'm joining the meeting is at the beginning of the meeting, I share my agenda, and then I'm like, what else do we need to add? And so that, it's not like I've covered all of the time and just like stole all of the time talking, and then people just don't have time to express their, thoughts. Usually I give, at the beginning of every meeting, I ask whether there is something else people would love to discuss. And it doesn't have to be like a big thing. Usually it's a small thing, or like a soft reminder from other people. But it turns out to work for me pretty nicely, because of this, like with this structure, at least I know that I have to leave a certain amount of time for other people to speak and share what they would love.
Okay, we're about at 1 minute later than the allocated time, and we have another event coming up, but otherwise I would be very happy to continue chatting, because this has been very interesting. First of all, thank you all so much for accepting our invitation and for taking part in this panel. I learned a lot from all of you, and I hope that everyone else did. If you have any wrapping thoughts, you can feel free to share it. Just be brief.
I just wanted to thank you for inviting me and having me here to speak.
Likewise.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also would love to say I truly appreciate such an opportunity. I hope it's valuable for everyone. If people would love to get connected to us and chat more, I'm pretty sure all of us will be open to share our experiences and support if that's needed.
Yes, their social accounts are shared on the webpage, so you can feel free to connect and discuss more if needed. Coming up next is an event organized by our chapter in Netherlands. So they will be sharing some cool tricks and insights about working remotely and getting inspired from your kids. So you can follow the event on the link below. It will also start live on our LinkedIn page. So hope you enjoy it. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
great day,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.